In late autumn in Paris, after a stressful day of promoting the film, Sam and Caitriona escaped the hotel through a side door that few people noticed. They didn't tell the manager, nor did they inform anyone in the crew. They simply wanted to breathe some fresh air. The street was wet with rain, the yellow lights reflecting on the road shimmering. Caitriona wore a dark woolen scarf, hiding half of her face under the hood of her coat. Sam pulled his baseball cap down low, laughing as he walked. "I feel like we're doing an escape." Caitriona glanced, her lips pursed to keep from laughing out loud. "As long as no one finds out, then it's freedom." They turned into a small street where there was a late-night cafe. No paparazzi, no noise, just the smell of roasted coffee and the patter of rain outside the glass. The two of them sat in a corner in the back. The dim light made the cafe seem isolated from the world outside. "How many more times do you think we can do this?" Caitriona asked, her voice both joking and serious. Sam paused for a beat, then smiled. "How many more times do you want to?" The answer made the atmosphere sink but became deeper. The two were silent for a while, only hearing the sound of the spoon stirring the coffee cup and the sound of the wind whistling outside the door. There were moments that didn't need dialogue, but were enough to make others feel the unnameable connection. Late at night, when they left the cafe, they walked along the Seine. The Eiffel Tower lights flashed in the distance, casting their shadows on the shimmering water. No one took pictures, no one called out their names. Just two famous people, temporarily living as ordinary people, walking side by side. Caitriona stopped, looked at Sam. "Is it possible that in the future, people will be curious and recreate this very moment?" Sam chuckled softly, slowly. "Maybe, but they'll never know what we really said and thought." In that moment, the world seemed to fall behind. The river wind blew against Caitriona's hood, causing a few strands of hair to come loose. She reached out to catch them, but Sam was quicker, gently fixing them as if by reflex, so familiar that they hadn't even realized how long it had been since it was just a colleague habit. After a few seconds of silence, the two continued walking along the stone embankment. The light click of shoes on the pavement echoed regularly, drowning out the distant sounds of cars. Occasionally, a few glances passed by them, but no one looked for too long. It felt like Paris tonight was silently protecting them from all curious eyes. Approaching an old stone bridge, Caitriona sat down on a dark wooden bench placed close to the railing. Sam leaned against her, arms crossed over her chest, eyes on the black water sparkling with lights. No one said anything, but the atmosphere wasn't awkward, on the contrary, it was dangerously calm. Dangerous because with just a question, a look, any fragile boundary could be penetrated. "Do you remember the first time we went somewhere just the two of us like this?" Caitriona asked, her voice low but clear, as if she had been thinking about the question for a long time. Sam tilted her head slightly, a look of surprise in her eyes that turned into a small smile. "I remember. Edinburgh. We found an excuse to break away from the crew just to eat the lamb stew you said you wanted to try again." Caitriona laughed. "Actually, I just wanted to escape for a few hours because the filming schedule was so stressful. But in the end, it felt like a private trip." "I know," Sam said softly, "and I didn't tell anyone." "Me neither." In that moment, they both looked at each other, not the acting look, not the professional observation they always had when they were in front of the camera. It was so genuine that if someone took a single frame, the world would be left wondering. A sudden gust of wind blew, carrying the cold and the pungent smell of river water. Caitriona pulled her coat closer, but Sam stepped closer, reaching out to hold her collar. The distance between them was only half a breath. "Have you ever thought?" she started, but then stopped, as if afraid she would hear something she couldn't take back. Sam didn't press. He just looked straight into her eyes, enough for Caitriona to swallow softly once because too many things were running through her mind. When she was about to speak again, a flash of light from the end of the bridge made them both turn around at the same time. A figure walked quickly towards them. At first, it seemed like it was just a passerby, but the way the person moved was too noticeable. Sam immediately realized something was wrong. He stepped forward to lightly block the front, causing Caitriona to frown slightly. Is something wrong? Not sure, but I don't like the way that person looks at me. They got up from their chairs and walked slowly in the opposite direction. Even without looking back too clearly, Caitriona could feel the footsteps behind them, deliberately keeping their distance. If they were just passers-by, they wouldn't have followed for so long. Paris is full of people who recognize us, she whispered, but they rarely walk alone at night like this. I don't think he's a fan, Sam said quickly. The two decided to pull into a small street that led into a deserted late-night area, where rows of old houses were interspersed with bakeries that closed early. They turned into a cobblestone alley, the weak yellow light casting a shadow over an old wall covered with vines. Sam suddenly took Caitriona's hand, not in a showy way, but out of instinct. Her hand was a little cold, but the feeling made him squeeze tighter. It could be a coincidence, Caitriona said, trying to keep her voice calm. Maybe, Sam agreed, but I don't want to push my luck. They quickened their pace, around a small metal door that led to a courtyard behind an old tavern. The walls were walled, and the overhead lights were dim but enough to see. When the door closed behind them, Sam let go of her hand. I think we should get back to the hotel before whoever it was finds us, he said. And if they've already taken a picture? The question made Sam silent for a few seconds. Then he looked straight at her, his eyes sparkling in the darkness. If I did, I wouldn't regret going with you tonight. Caitriona paused. She didn't answer, nor did she avoid him. Instead, she stepped closer to him, so close that she could hear her own heartbeat. Just a beat, but enough for all the unspoken words to touch the space between them. Let's go home then, she said, but her voice was different. Quieter, warmer, and more honest. On the way back to the hotel, neither of them mentioned what had just happened. But it didn't disappear, just quietly drifting under each other's thoughts. As they neared the lobby, Sam suddenly grabbed Caitriona's hand before stepping into the light. If I want to go out again tomorrow night, will you come with me? She looked at him for a few seconds, then nodded slightly. As long as no one knows, and no one calls it wrong. Sam smiled slightly, a smile that rarely appeared in public. Then we won't call it by name. The two of them walked into the hotel lobby as if they had just returned from a late meeting. But anyone who was observant would notice that something was different from when they left. Their eyes were no longer simply those of colleagues. The distance between them was no longer a social distance. And that night, even though they slept in two different rooms, they both thought of the same scene. Someone might have seen them, or maybe not, but that sweet feeling of danger made them both not want to stop. The next morning, in the elevator leading down to the lobby, they happened to pass an assistant from the crew pulling a suitcase of equipment. The person glanced at Sam, then at Caitriona, his gaze lingering for a moment not too long, but enough to make them both wary. The elevator door closed, Sam tilted his head and whispered, just enough for her to hear. You see? Caitriona didn't answer right away, just adjusted her scarf and replied softly. We'll pretend we have nothing to hide. But the look they exchanged before the door opened wasn't acting at all.